Studies are telling us that loneliness is on the rise in the West, and yet for many, the social stigma surrounding it means we don't feel free to talk about it. Well, today we're going to talk about it. Lydia, you say that loneliness in this life is pretty much inevitable. We're all going to experience it. Why do you say that?
Well, one, as we said before, God created us with this place that's only going to find its fulfillment in Him. Social media contributes to it, what we're seeing all around us. I think also one of the factors is actually the freedom we have. If you think like no other society, we're free to move around, change jobs, change churches, and because of that, we're not making commitments like we used to. You know, you think about generations ago, people were born, they grew up in that town, they married in that town, they raised their kids in that town, and they died in that town. And today, if we don't like something about our lives, we just move to a new town. We can switch jobs or churches, and there's such a loneliness that comes with this constant moving around. But we see it as freedom. We have freedom. We can go here, we can go there. We can chase the dreams that we think are going to make us happy and fulfilled and not lonely, not realizing that we're actually increasing our loneliness in the process.
We talked about in the first half about what we try to fill the loneliness with, and some people really get into a pattern of trying to fill it with a new adventure or a new job or a new town, but actually they're just making it worse again. Anytime we're filling it with something other than God, we're making it worse.
Yes, yes. And you know, sometimes if life doesn't go the way we think it should, that's where we actually can increase our loneliness too, because we start to resent God. We think, well, you know, I followed Him, I followed the circumstances He gave me, and I tried to be obedient, but it didn't work out. And, you know, I think about young women who hope to have a significant relationship that results in marriage. They get mad at God if they're doing all the right things and it doesn't work out for them. And then they decide, well, following God doesn't work and it's left me lonely, or I think I'm going to go a different path. Or we set out on a ministry opportunity or a job and thinking, I'm going to live to the glory of God in this, and yet when it doesn't result in tangible blessing, when we're made to suffer for it sometimes, we think that something must be wrong, that following God doesn't pay. And we make the mistake of equating biblical obedience with prosperity. And if we do that, we're going to miss the very remedy that God has provided, which is Himself. And that is what we miss. The psalmist in Psalm 73, verse 25, he says, "Whom have I in heaven but you? And there is nothing on this earth I desire besides you." And if you think about it, what he's saying is that, not that we're creatures who want by virtue of being human beings, we do desire things, but he found God to be so enough for him that every other desire he had faded in comparison. So it was put in its right perspective. And when we come to know God as our everything and all He really wants to be for us, and it's not through jumping through all these hoops, it's through sinking into Him in those lonely hours. Instead of racing to fix it, we turn to Him and say, I hate this. This is horrible. I'm alone. I feel like I'm the only one. Life has let me down. I feel like you've let me down. And we just get that real and honest with Him. He will draw near. He loves when we're honest. And then we are going to start finding increasingly that if we turn to Him in those times of loneliness, rather than just escape it any way we can, that He is all He promised to be. And then our good desires won't take on this have to have it or I die kind of perspective.
I interview a lot of people on this program that go through really hard times. And a lot of them say, you know, it was in that dark place that I discovered God in a way I didn't even know He could be. I think a lot of times God allows the circumstances of our lives to push us into that corner. We can always make the choice to try to fill it with other things, bad behaviors, you know, busyness, whatever. Or we can decide to look Him in the face, be honest, and really access Him in a new way. You know, one of my favorite chapters in this book, you talked about the loneliness of feeling different, how I don't fit in. And I've had so many people say to me, you know, I don't fit. I'm not like everybody else. So many people feel that. How do we overcome that?
Well, I think that is a huge source of loneliness today, whether it's the difference that comes from a psychological disorder or stigma or some sort of physical abnormality or depression or something that just makes us feel like we don't measure up to other people or that we don't quite fit in for whatever reason. and we feel cut out from society. So what we try to do in those cases is just fix what we see as broken. And so by fixing ourselves, we think, we can solve our loneliness and have the happiness and the togetherness that we perceive everybody else does. But in reality, God is the one who has allowed that thing that makes us different. He has allowed it into our lives. He's woven it into the fabric of our being in order to drive us to where the remedy is really found, which again is in life in Christ. That's where we find it. And so it's not something to be despised. And we've talked about the lies we believe. That is a big one. We believe that that thing that makes us different is bad and wrong and evil, instead of it being something that God plans to use redemptively to bring us closer to Him and in the lives of others. And often those very things bring us closer, not only to the Lord, but to other people, if we will turn to Him instead of away from Him in our struggle with it.
It's so true. There's so much great content in this book. I absolutely loved reading it. Thank you so much, Lydia, for just unpacking a tiny little bit today.
Thanks, Cheryl.
Well, if you've been lonely, if you are lonely, if you feel like there is no hope for your loneliness, I hope you got a little bit of just joy and anticipation for the future today, and know that the answer is pressing into God. You know, I watched an interview with a fentanyl user just in the last week, and she said, if I knew there was another way to be happy, I would stop using. Well, I want to tell you there is another way to find peace and joy in your life, and that is through a relationship with God. I want to invite you today, if you've never asked Him into your life, into the challenges, into the loneliness that you're experiencing, there has never been a better time. And we have people that want to help you and just pray with you and talk to you about where you're at on your spiritual journey. Give us a call. It's 1-866-273-4444. We would love to start you on a new journey with God.